Welcome to the podcast that explores mysterious disappearances, bizarre worldly occurrences, strange phenomenon, and basically everything that's weird. Welcome to the podcast. Everything that's weird. Tonight, we're talking about Whistleblower. David Grusch. Who is David Grusch, you might
Bob
ask?
Lazar 2.0.
He is Bob Lazar Light. He is Adderall to cocaine. He is Diet Coke to Coca-Cola. He is not
He's the
white.
Wish version of Bob Lazar.
He is a less interesting version of Bob Lazar. Now, so I broke my rule. I watched a few podcasts with him. He's been doing a lot of podcasts lately.
I feel like you're like Gabe Portnoy with his fucking one bite challenge, pizza challenge, and he eats fucking like 10
Yeah,
slices.
I know. I do.
I got this rule. I don't listen to other podcasts, but I did listen to this podcast.
Well, the reason is this is kind of a news story. So it's not like, it's not like the Philadelphia experiment or some like older tale. This is more like, this guy is relatively new. He came out in front of Congress. And what makes him kind of special is that he came out under the Whistleblower Act.
Yeah.
And I'm not real familiar with that. Except I think what that act does is that it says that, if you see some kind of misjustice or some way that the public is being slighted, you have not immunity, but you're kind of safe from the government tampering with your life.
Yeah, it's a bit of a jurisdictional shield.
I don't believe that.
I don't either. I think they're like, yeah, come on out.
It's like the Patriot Act.
Yeah.
Only terrorists. We're only going to do terrorists.
Right.
Oh, okay. Only terrorists and drug dealers. Yeah, hold on.
Right.
Only terrorists and drug dealers and people that talk shit about a pandemic.
Right.
And then it gets really deep. But so he was part of the U.S. Air Force, and he was based in Afghanistan. He did a couple tours. He was in intelligence, and like, basically, he said even though he was in intelligence, he was kind of obtuse to the whole UFO thing, which I can almost understand that.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think people think, you like if you're in intelligence, you get everything. But, you have to remember the military is need to know basis, right?
Yeah.
And so if he's in intelligence, he's probably dealing with terrorists. He's probably dealing with warlords. He's, things like that, and political situations. So he can understand before, a unit might go into a certain area, what they're looking at, what's going on, why they would be there. And that's kind of, I think, what his designation was in the service. But what he ended up uncovering was that there's these documents of this, basically like this program that reverse engineers otherworldly spacecraft.
Yeah, well, he was from, I think what he said was from 2019 to 2021, he was a representative of NRO, which is an Unidentified Aerial Phenomenon Task Force.
So that was kind of after he
stumbled across this stuff.
Yes. But prior to that,
for the record, I don't know a lot about this guy. I'm playing catch up.
it's okay because a lot of people don't. Like, and when I said that, I listened to the podcast, he also doesn't give a lot. So it's not like Bob Lazar. Bob Lazar is like, this is how the reactor runs. This is why it looks like this. This is where I worked. This guy's not that. Every time they ask him a question, he's like, I can't answer that.
Yeah.
That's classified. And depending on what side of the fence you're on, that's either, highly suspect or incredibly valid. You know what I mean?
Right.
So
or it's somebody that it kind of, because I see what you're saying, because it can kind of make you either credible or uncredible depending on how your lens is. So you could look at it as, well, this guy still understands that national security matters, and that there's certain things that if he said it, that it could harm the United States or something like that. You know what I mean? Which is where his family is. So
and then what he implies is that it will ultimately harm him.
Right. So
and that you kind of like, it will get to that, but that's, like I said, depending on what side of the fence you're on.
Right. Yeah.
It either makes him super believable or an incredible liar.
Right.
One of his main claims,
he's got that good claim to make to not have to get caught lying.
Right?
Like, oh, sorry, that's classified.
So one of his main claims is that a lot of people think, the UFO phenomenon, even though it started basically with Roswell.
Yeah.
And even though they have like ancient aliens and they have them in paintings and stuff, he kind of makes a claim that the first like modern day UFO crash happened in Italy, and Benito Mussolini's government recovered it.
Huh.
And the reason that's a big deal is because the Germans had a big interest in UFOs. It was rumored that the United States had already had a crashed UFO. And it was rumored that the Russians did too. Whether or not they did, of course, nobody knows.
Yeah, ours should have been full of retards. I shouldn't say.
We're canceled.
I shouldn't have said that. I couldn't stop myself.
We're canceled.
I'm sorry. I'm challenged.
Either way.
It's still bad. Right, you gotta stop bringing that up.
Yeah, I know. But it was a lot of people think it was a big reason why the Germans and the Italians became the Axis powers in World War II. It was like this collaborative effort shortly after that with the Germans because they kind of had all the scientists.
Isn't that one of the moments where you're like, God damn these fuckers? You know what I mean?
Right.
Like they're moving mountains for reasons that we don't even know about. And we're totally like, this is why, and it's patriotic, and they're like,
and he gets
morons.
into that too. He gets into that as far as like people being held down, and there being poverty and famine.
Yeah, you can read that writing on the wall.
Problems, that could be fixed with this technology that exists.
Right.
And that's kind of why he came forward. And when he first came forward, he said he was getting, some harassing phone calls and this is why he kind of took this stance that he was going to come out publicly.
Mm-hmm.
So, of course, the government comes out and says, people come out all the time. They come out every couple years. They say they saw stuff, but there's no evidence.
Right.
And when he was pressed for evidence and everything I saw, he cited that he didn't have the clearance to talk about it, that he couldn't talk about it, and that it was classified.
Mm-hmm.
So they had a hearing. He goes to the hearing, and it's a lot of the same thing. It's never like really brought out exactly what he's talking about or what is going on and why he's bringing this out. But the main underlying thing is that before this, people like Bob Lazar, people like John Lear said that there was a tier that wasn't the government, and that places like Area 51, Area 52, that they're run by corporations like Lockheed Martin, ICIG, and that the government doesn't have access to them because they're R&D facilities, and that only certain members of the government are allowed in these areas. And that kind of makes sense a little bit, right?
Right.
Because, like, okay, we are a free enterprise country. So, I mean...
You can't have everybody putting two and two together.
Exactly. Right. And you want to have people with trade secrets, right? To keep stuff under wraps. And what's a better way to keep things under wraps than for money, right?
Yeah, well, part of his testimony, wasn't it about, like, it started out what he was, I think, like how I understand it, is that it started with him thinking this was a white collar crime because of the cover up. Like,
but
he
what
said
he
that
actually,
there was substantive evidence that there was a white collar crime that took place, that they were trying to cover it up, and he even reached out to some people, but nobody would touch it.
But what he's actually saying is that there's actually a whole program.
Yeah. And but he's like saying like they were like falsifying documents and shit. Right. To cover it up, public documents to cover it up. So
I mean, I don't believe that about our government.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I am loyal to the state.
He's saying that officially, where everybody else has said that this has kind of been private, and there are people that are in the know, and they want to keep it private, but he's saying that there actually is this cooperative going on, and they're reverse engineering these technologies, and they know about them. They've known about them. They know that they're not from here. But the one thing that I didn't see, he does say that he's very careful. He says they're manned by people. No, he says, I'm wrong. He says they are manned by people, by things not from here.
Yeah.
And the government has been very cautious to say that there aren't aliens. And we'll get into that in the next.
Yeah, he told a French newspaper that they could be coming from an extra dimension.
So he's big on dimensional.
Yeah. So that the intelligence officials of the U.S. military were briefed on a football field-sized craft.
Right. So this is, I feel like I can wrap my head around a lot of things. Interdimensional things really are hard for me to wrap my head around. Because if that's the case, then, I mean, all bets are off, right?
Yeah.
If, like they say, string theory, there's 11 parallel universes. universes. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, if that's the case, I mean, how do you keep track of that?
I don't know. You throw all signs out the window and start over.
Right. All right. So, David Grusch, he's a whistleblower. He comes out, hides under this Whistleblower Act, which we probably need to figure that out real quick. He hides under this Whistleblower Act. He does go public, says that he has seen documents that acknowledge that there's actually like a government agency that does nothing but cover UAPs, UFOs, or whatever you want to call them. And they've retrieved these craft. They are trying to reverse engineer for the technology, and they know that they're manned by something not from here.
Yeah, and I think he also said that that there was what do you say, malevolent activity by UFOs.
Yep.
Take that for whatever it means.
They do
that. They do that a lot. Well, like the other ones we've done where it's kind of, I don't know. I talked to my wife about this before, where we discuss, are they saying that aliens are coming to attack just to kind of like do that fear tactic thing?
So we'll get in. Let's get into that when we talk about some facts, because I think you're on the same thing that I'm going to say when we come back.
Okay.
But yeah, is this true? Does he know something that nobody else knows up until this point? Yeah, other people have come forward and said they've worked on stuff, but he's acknowledging that the government knows about it, whereas before he's saying they've known about it since 1933. And have they always known about it? And has this been like a shadow part of the government? And this technology is being withheld, technology that really could probably end all the misery on Earth. Why are they withholding it? And that's like his part of the crime. So is he right? Is he right? Does he know exactly what he's talking about? And let's get into some facts, and then we'll see what we think. Okay, so first of all, the main claim, I think, for him is that this has been going on at least in modern era since 1933. So that was really hard to find. I couldn't find. Okay, I guess whatever. We have the regular internet. I don't have military internet. Actually, none of us do. So how do we know for sure? But when I tried to look up the Italian crash in 1933, there's just a lot of stories. Not even like Brazil. Not like firsthand. It's just like it's second and third hand stories. And a lot of them are regurgitated. Yeah. So it's like they took them from one article and just copied and pasted them to another article.
Yeah, you get that a lot. Those are the stories that I start getting leery about, because it's like,
right, but Roswell has a bunch of like first-hand stuff. Like, for instance, there's a guy that ran the funeral home. There's like the nurse that made the coffins. There's the nurse that was working in the ER that gave first-hand accounts. And then you have like, John Lear, who said he worked on like super secret, planes, and he's like, where do we even have the technology for this? And they're like, well, we don't. We're developing it. And he's like, from what? And they're like, well, there's these programs. And then he meets Bob Lazar, who's like, yeah, I've worked on those programs. And he's like, that makes sense. So, like, you have, like, not that didn't happen. Because who knows? Maybe that did happen. And the Germans were way ahead of us technology-wise, except for the atomic bomb. But they were
one little slip up there.
We did steal all their scientists, though. They would have had their scientists stayed there.
We're full of Nazis, man.
Yeah, but some of them were some of them were Jewish, so they would have been exterminated. Well, but think about that. Had they not had that. Had that not been
but
their
were
focus,
were they like George Soros Jews? Were they like reporting on their own fucking people?
No politics and everything. That's weird.
Well, that's a self-proclaimed thing by him. That wasn't. That's not even like a conspiracy theory. He like said that in an interview. He was proud that he did it.
What?
He was there in Germany. They went into towns and to get, like, when they started trying to seize control and stuff, and they were trying to round up Jews, they would
use Jews.
They would use Jews to tell them where other ones that were
That's
enemies were hiding, and he was one of those people. He, like, in an interview said, "Yeah, I did this," and he was like, "They were like, are you brave?" He's like, "Of course I'm proud of this," and blah 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 or whatever. And it was like, okay.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he that's self-proclaimed.
I did learn this, though. So, did you see Inglourious Basterds with Quentin Tarantino?
Yeah, you want to hear something cool about Inglourious Basterds?
Adam Sandler was supposed to be the bear.
Supposed to be the bear. Yeah.
He's like, because he was on Howard Stern. He's like, "You were supposed to be the bear Jew."
He wrote the movie for him.
He's like, "I was." He's like, "It broke my heart." He's like, "Why?" He's like, "He wrote that part for me." And he was doing something else. He was doing another serious movie. Yeah, it wasn't Uncut Gems.
No, I can't remember what it was.
I know, I can't either. And it wasn't Punch Drunk Love, but it was a serious movie that he did.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the other thing is, this guy comes out to the world basically under the Whistleblower Act. Mario?
Yeah.
What do we got for the Whistleblower Act?
So it basically guarantees your freedom of speech against your employer. And there's a list of items that, fall under that. I think the ones that specifically would be for him would be danger to public health, danger to public safety. But some of the other ones are mismanagement of funds, gross mismanagement, abuse of authority, things like that. So I think he falls under the public health and public safety.
Okay. So then when he's talking about this stuff and he says that's classified, that could be part of some program where we're developing a weapon or something that protects us. And that's why he can't talk about it. But like when he's saying that that these things exist, that's like public safety.
Yeah, well, if you're talking about if you go back to when he was saying that there was like a malevolent activity by UFOs, that would fall under that category. So it could be a threat to public health, in that sense. I think it's also that he was, like I said before, he was stating that white collar crimes had been taking place in the cover up too. So that would also be abuse of authority.
One of the conspiracies with 9/11 is that Donald Rumsfeld, the day before 9/11 on 9/10, has like a press conference that says that there's like $4 trillion missing from the budget, and he doesn't know where it went. And a lot of people,
wasn't all the documents that would
and a lot of people,
were in the Twin Towers.
Well, that's what they say, but I mean, all that stuff's on government. In 2001, that was all on government hard drives and whatever. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, when you bury stuff into black projects and stuff, yeah, I mean, that's, Mm-hmm. And I think when you get to what Bob Lazar was saying, with like it could essentially every problem with the world is fixed with anti-gravity, then it's like, well, why are they holding that? And the sad fact is it's for money.
Yeah.
And because
political power.
Because when I was, I worked for a software company, and I'm probably going to get killed for this. They have WiMAX. WiMAX was the technology that came out in like the 90s. So WiMAX, so a LAN is a local area network. So your router in your house is a LAN.
Right.
So what that does is that shoots a web over your house and outside of your house. If you ever walked outside and you've been listening to like a podcast and all of a sudden it cuts off, you're too far away and it takes a minute for your data to kick in, right?
Yeah.
So the same exact thing. And Baltimore was the first one to experiment with it. And they shot basically like a giant router. They shot it out over the city and everybody had free internet. So instead of doing that, where you just paid for it in your taxes, they came up with the alternate technology, which is worth way more money. And that's to break it up into networks that they could charge individually for you to pay for that.
Right.
So, whereas you would pay pennies on the dollar for the year, you're paying, whatever your data rates are, $50 to $75 a month, per person.
It's just like the cell phone companies buying up the airspace.
And they lobbied.
The original cell phones didn't need that shit.
Absolutely. And they lobbied, the government to get the government to say, and that sucks. That sucks because, I am one of the people, I would say, truthfully, I am one of the people that really got the internet. When it came out, I'm like, holy shit, man. You can look up anything. And, if we'll be in a bar and we'll be arguing about something.
Yeah.
And I'll say, stop. Let's just look it up.
Yeah.
And they were like, you got to go to your phone. I'm like, well, what are we going to do? Just be dummies?
Yeah.
I
know. I'm always like, if only there was a way that we could figure this out.
So, so him coming out under this, I do kind of understand why he would do that. One problem I have with him is that when it comes to any crucial question, he can't tell you. He can't tell you the answer.
Yeah.
And Bob Lazar did.
Because you're talking about hands off and ears open, the difference, So I think Bob Lazar, he's hands on, and then the other guys, he's overhearing and seeing things. It's not. He wasn't putting himself first person in a lot of these places, right?
It's more like I heard this, I saw this,
I read this.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's what I thought too. And I mean, he did make claims, and I know there were. I read something. There was somebody that was going to interview him, and they were vetting him before the interview, and so they were interviewing other people that knew him to check his credibility. And there was a retired Army colonel named Carl Nell, and then somebody else that went by a pseudonym so they would know they weren't getting recognized. This Army colonel called Grusch beyond reproach. That's how he described him.
Okay.
But he still backed up a lot of stuff he claims he was making.
Another problem I have is that the government all of a sudden was like, there's UFOs, but now, lately, they're saying there's not UFOs. Okay.
They
So
want
that's
to
like a
get
new
because they
thing?
want people to get wrapped back up into conspiracy.
Yeah. Like
Like it
well,
didn't
the
work.
new-
They were like, "Hey, don't pay attention to what we're doing. Look, aliens." And we were like, "Fuck them aliens." And then we were looking over. We were like, "No, we see what you're doing." And then they were like, "Well, let's pretend we're covering up aliens."
And then now the Pentagon just came out and said there's no aliens. There's no
Yeah,
proof that there's no. That was just a recent report.
right.
And like, well, okay, what the fuck was all that shit? For like during COVID, they're like, hey, you guys, aliens.
Yeah.
And everybody's like, yeah. What about Wuhan, dude? Are we
Yeah. What's
die?
going on?
Like, for real, people are like, okay, why is there lockdowns? Why, like, what is for real happening? And they're like, no, for real, guys, aliens.
Aliens. Straight up.
And we're like, yeah. And it's crazy that people really didn't give a shit about the aliens.
Yeah.
Because they don't. It's not like an everyday topic on the news. That should be tonight at 11, like every other night, aliens, you guys.
Yeah, if they'd
Right.
have done that, in the late 80s or early 90s,
Right. It would
whatever, you know what I mean?
tease off.
If you were doing it in the 80s, every family would have been sitting around the TV watching it.
Exactly. And
they'd
then
have been minds blown, you know?
and now they're just like, I don't know, maybe not. And then they come out with a report that says, they're not. And so right before we did this episode, we were talking, me and my wife Stephanie were talking about this, and she said, so what's the deal? I said, I won't tell you what I said because I'll say that next segment, but I said, the guy from Blink-182, they asked him, some guy was signing autographs, he's playing a concert, he's like, hey, what's up with aliens? And he's like, they're robots. He's like, it's hard to explain. They're robots, but they have real tissue. They're AI robots. I don't know how else to say it.
Yeah.
And the guy's like, thanks, man. And that was it. But like that little snippet, that kind of makes sense. Because say there are challenges with sending an organism that far away.
Yeah.
Well, wouldn't you make something that functions like a robot? And maybe they're way beyond mechanical. You know what I mean? And they can make something that has a heart.
Well, have you ever seen the show Altered Carbon?
No.
Okay, so in Altered Carbon, it's like way in the future or whatever. And everybody's got what they call stacks. It's like this chip that's in the back of your neck, and it goes like into your spine, and that's everything that you are is on that chip. Like, you know what I mean? Your whole consciousness, and you can have that re-sleeved, they call it, and what they do, so you can get like a new body. You can live forever. If you're rich enough, you can live forever. And so it's kind of like that thing where it's like, it would be possible through something like that, where you'd have your whole consciousness on a thing, so you could just keep going to a different body, and they just grow new bodies as you're going for you, and you just re-sleeve yourself.
So what does that mean?
Like if you wanted to, like you were saying, if you were going really far away, your body wouldn't stand up to it. If your whole consciousness and being were on a chip, you could just remove it and put it into a new body, and you could grow those bodies on your trip.
Oh, well, okay. So the alien interview, the guy's like, well, how do you live and die? What do you think about death? And he's like, yeah, we don't think about it like that. You're in a vessel, and then you continue in another vessel.
Right.
So that's kind of what
yeah. So watch Altered Carbon. That's a good. It's a good show.
Okay. So his other claim, and this is one thing he did kind of go into a little bit of detail in podcast on Joe Rogan. It was on Joe Rogan.
One bite. Everybody knows the rules.
Yeah. Sorry. Was that there's a that a lot of this has to do with multi-dimensional travel.
Yeah.
So okay.
Which is the more sensible explanation for interstellar travel.
Yeah, is it?
Yeah.
So because
if you're just moving from one dimension to the other, you don't have to travel all the way across.
What's that movie?
Stephen
King, and they're in the grocery store. Oh my God! Hold on, let me look this up. But Mario, what do you know about string theory? We got like a brief. I know this is. I can't. I don't. You don't have to get it.
Hey Mario, can you sum up string theory for us?
Listen. You're not. I know you're not Sheldon. Okay, but in like a layman's term, there is like it's a theory that there's like 11 realities. Am I right?
I think you're crossing dimensions with string. The string theory is just the smallest possible thing that we think there could be, smaller than quarks, and it's just the basic smallest pieces that create the universe.
Okay, then I am wrong.
Or vibrating strings. You're thinking of the 11 dimensions, I believe.
Okay. All right. So he was saying that these things are interdimensional, and when I said last time, all bets are off. Because if you're talking interdimensional, that means, fuck, what is 11? Hold on. And if I'm wrong,
no, three spatial dimensions in string theory.
Tell me I'm wrong about this. If there's 11 dimensions, 11 times 11, that means just me, you, Mario, talking about this, there's 1,300 different variations of this reality. One being you're not a grandpa. One being I'm a grandpa. One being Mario. You know what I mean?
Right.
Mario's a grandpa. Okay, that's very simple. That's a very simple explanation.
Dude, I just looked up a simple explanation for string theory, and I'm even more confused than I was when I...
The Mist. Did you see The Mist?
It sounds familiar.
God, The Mist is good. The Mist is so fucking good. Okay, so they were experimenting at this base, and all of a sudden there's these like killer, they don't know what it is. It's like insect alien things that are gigantic that kill people.
Mm-hmm.
And they came in the mist. It's a really, really, really good Stephen King. It's a really, 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 and they're all holed up in this grocery store. Janine Triplehorn's in it. I know that. And they're all held up in this grocery store trying to figure out what to do. And really, really good. But the army was experimenting with these dimensions. So, okay, the other thing we got to get into is that...
So,
is he crazy?
There is something in string theory about... It says physics accepts that our universe contains 3 spatial dimensions, but string theorists argue for a model that describes extra dimensions of space.
Okay, so I do watch.
It says so. It does have 6 additional dimensions go undetected.
Okay, so that's Sheldon.
So that's 9 total. So it's 9.
All right. I learned that in Big Bang Theory.
Didn't Penny solve string theory in Big Bang Theory?
Yeah. Apparently, if you have, as she's going to bed.
Yeah.
Apparently, that doesn't work unless you have this.
She walks in. I was helping Sheldon solve string theory. Like,
I love Big Bang. Big Bang.
I've only caught a couple episode here and there. I never really watched it.
Stephanie hates it.
Yeah.
She likes young Sheldon, but she hates Big Bang. Okay, so we can't move forward without talking about this. Is he crazy?
Is he crazy? Well, he does have some PTSD problems that he got arrested for, and there was actually 2 different incidents that the police were called. And the one time his wife called the police because he said that he was just waiting for her to kill him. She was complaining about his alcoholism too, which for the levels of security clearance this guy had, which I don't think we really touched on, was this guy had, exceptional levels of clearance. And he
okay, he did. He did. So did Snowden.
He was under those clearances, though. For anybody that's under those type of clearances, top secret clearances, you can't have any drug or alcohol problems. It's like an immediate. They should be shutting you down from any of that information, and he didn't get shut down from it. So there's a question to that, because this incident report exists where his wife had called him an alcoholic, and said that he needed to get help. And when she said that to him, he said, "I'm just waiting for you to kill me." And she took that as a suicide sign. So she called the police, and they went through, it was like an ordeal, because she went through the court and got him admitted into a psychiatric ward. So, where he had to get like medically evaluated before he was released. So it's all documented. So there's a question to whether, but I don't know how much of a question that is to me, as far as that incident goes.
One other thing that I thought was really interesting is that he said that aliens are experimenting on U.S. citizens.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that goes back a long time. What I've heard in a bunch of different,
how possible that is too. I mean, think about how many people are missing in this country.
But remember we talked to Michaela about Zimbabwe,
right?
And she's like, "That's just not a part of the culture."
Yeah.
But it is here. Mm-hmm. And the part of the reason it is here, I think, is because one thing that has always come out is that they've made some kind of treaty where they allowed aliens to abduct people for experiments.
Right.
And he came out and said that, they abduct people and they kill them sometimes, and then they deactivate our nuclear weapons, and that the government also kills people, which of course, I mean, it doesn't, but
they don't even hide that one.
There's a movie, Signs, right? He's gonna sign up for the army. And the general that looks like Owen Wilson says, he's like a sergeant or something. And he's like, I figured it out. I know why they're here. And he's like, why? And he's like, they're here because they're sending scouts. They're seeing what we do. You don't send the whole army.
Yeah.
You send a few people here and there just to do some reconnaissance, see what's going on, what makes them tick, so that's, you think about it that way, he did uncover something gigantic,
right? There's this, I don't know, it's like I talked to, depending on who you talk to, and they talk about alien life, and if it came here it would be so highly intelligent, because how else would they get here? And that because of that superior intelligence, that they would somehow not just automatically not be violent. Like their intelligence would take them past that. And it's like, to me, that's not, we have an emotional attachment to what we call violence. You know what I mean? Like,
in some cases.
And everybody's got like different versions of what violence is.
In some cases, like a deer might not think that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, cows probably don't think that about us.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And it's like, it's one of those things where it's, if you actually think about the life on this planet, the higher the intelligence, the more capable of violence and cruelty they become. You have killer whales that they'll torture and like literally beat the shit out of seals and not eat them and leave them wounded and dying in the water. Like, they're completely cruel to, like, they flip them with their tail, hit them in the air, do belly smackers on them. You know what I mean? And think about your house cat torturing prey. You know what I mean? Lets it run a little bit, swats it back down.
My cat Pumpkin Puss is a serial killer.
Right. So, like, you know, and even chimpanzees and stuff, they can be ridiculously cruel. You know what I mean? And I saw a video once where this chick was talking about, she was doing aid work at a zoo, right? And she wasn't like a keeper or anything like that. She was just a volunteer. And she was helping out, and she was working with the guy that works with all the primates. And he told her, he said, a chimp will kill you.
Oh, dude.
Said a gorilla will kill you even if it's trying to protect you. And she said, an orangutan will dissect you just to find out what's inside of you. That's ultimate cruelty from and orangutans probably are easily the most intelligent of the primates. You know, so there's a lot to be said about intelligence leading to cruelty rather than leading away from it. But now, if you're saying super advanced, now here's the thing. Are they so advanced that they look upon us like we do ants? Now, to us, stepping on an ant's not cruel, but to the ants, it's like, oh my God, you know what I mean? So it could be as simple as that. We're, like you said, a science experiment for them. And, you know, there's thousands of kids dissecting rats in a school right now. You know what I mean? So I don't know. Are they capable of harming us? Absolutely. They could be so far intelligent and so far superior intelligence to us that we're inconsequential to them. They might be so well traveled that they realize that there's planets like this all over the place, you know, with lower life forms and stuff. And it's like, maybe they've been to other dimensions, like we said, and they've seen 9 Earths. And they're like, what's the big deal if we kill a couple of them out of one dimension? You know,
what is Mario's super string theory is 11? Is that what it is?
That's what it looks like.
String theory's 9, super string theory's 11.
Yeah, that's what I thought. All right. Okay, I think we got enough to. I think we got enough to do anything.
Yep.
All right. Cool. Okay, I'm gonna go first. I don't not believe him. I don't think he's a complete liar. I don't believe that he's got an alcohol problem. Because when everything I saw him, he's very well spoken. And he seems like he knows a lot. What I doubt is his firsthand knowledge. However, I do think he stumbled across something, because he wouldn't be anything.
Right.
If he was nothing. So you brought up a good point with Bob Lazar. You said, I think it's one of those things that we have the technology and people want it. And we're trying to work on it. Whether or not it's extraterrestrial, who knows?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that. I've always thought that I do believe this is a real tough one for me. I think it's a combination of they've been here and that they're coming from somewhere else. And the places that they are the places that we're not. So like Antarctica and the depths of the ocean, because they see them all the time over water. I don't know exactly. I can't just throw out a blanket statement and say that, okay, these UFOs live underwater, these live in the deserts like the Walking White. Like, remember what we did Walking with the Tall Whites?
Yeah.
I can't just come out and say that, except there's a lot of places you're not allowed to go.
Yep.
And the government sets it up, and there's a reason you're not allowed to go there and all that stuff, right? There's also a bunch of, like, one thing he says is that they shut down nuclear sites. I've heard that several times on the History Channel and National Geographic and Discovery, like not on shows about aliens, just like there was this incident, it happened. I've also heard that the hunt for the Red October, that whole story was based on a guy that knew that there was an error in the radar and purposefully didn't call for a nuclear strike, and because of that there wasn't a nuclear war. So, like, I think this guy stumbled on some stuff that he didn't know what it was. He's partially right. And the stuff that he's partially right about is so sensitive that to bring it out really throws a lot of questions, especially under that Whistleblower Act of what are we doing with taxpayer money? And it's just easier to keep him as like a kook that's probably has PTSD from Afghanistan. He's a drinker. And, that whole, like, you're a drinker thing. I know a lot of drunk people. I work at a bar. Like, they may be drunk, but, like, that doesn't mean what they say isn't true.
Correct.
Our cook smokes crack around the clock, right? And he said, that guy went out, stole an ambulance. And I'm like, what did you say? He's like, the guy done went out and stole an ambulance. I'm like, dude, one more time. He's like, the guy done went out and stole an ambulance. I'm like, oh, an ambulance? And he's like, yeah. And he crashed it and they arrested him. So he at least knew what they were talking about. Yeah, he knew the story, right?
Yeah.
Was he out of his goddamn mind? Absolutely. Absolutely out of his mind. But the facts were there, and that's, so I believe this guy did come across something. I don't know if it's as groundbreaking as somebody like Bob Lazar. To me, what he unraveled, quote unquote, isn't anything that I don't think anybody didn't think existed. Now, the whole thing with they've been taking people in those circles, like in those UFO conspiracy circles, they've been saying that for a long time. And all the stories have said that was a treaty made where they knew they were here. They had like some kind of conversation, and there was like some kind of agreement made. And what I always heard was it was for fertility, because they were having problems. They had, when I say they, I mean extraterrestrials had gotten so advanced that they were like cloning. And when they were cloning, they were so good at it that they had forgotten how to reproduce. They had come to a problem with cloning where they were having problems with the genes. They were getting lower life expectancy, and they had projected, I don't know, whatever, that at some point they wouldn't be able to carry on their civilization, and that's why they were coming here. So
Right.
this guy, I think under the Whistleblower Act, it came out. I think he thought that was the most responsible thing to do. And so far, I mean, he hasn't been killed. He did say he has some threats, but like he's not like Bob Lazar where he got run off the road. But I believe, like you said with Bob Lazar, he saw something and heard things, but he was never witness to the actual event.
Right.
So I believe that he believes that this happened, and that there is this ongoing thing. Now, I think that he also thinks that this is like a huge detriment to humanity, where like not only are they sacrificing us, but at all the problems it could end in the world.
Right.
So I think he believes he saw documents that explain this. I think that he believes that he's like a freedom fighter. But I don't think he saw actual emails like Snowden that said spy on this person. So I would say he's in the believable category. He's probable. I would say his story and what he's saying is probable. Whether or not it's fact, he keeps saying things are classified and whatever. That's either an out and like we're like duped, because I feel like if it was me, I would be like Bob Lazar and say, Element 115. This is how the reactor works. You get in there and you're super excited, but it's actually kind of weird and you feel like you shouldn't be there. Like, that's a weird thing to say. That's a very weird thing to say. That's like,
Right.
And that's a very human reaction to seeing something otherworldly. And he doesn't have this. So I'm going to say that he saw all these documents. True. He doesn't know what it is. And this whole Freedom of Information Act thing is, he feels like he's part of a cog in the machine for disclosure. So I think it's probable that he knows what's going on, but there's no way he knows exactly what's going on, because if he did, from the mountaintops, and it's not that way.
Yeah, I get you. So I'm kind of feeling like the same way. Like I think that he saw stuff, cover-ups, stuff like that. I think maybe he's embellishing the stories a little bit. I don't know. I just I have trouble with a lot of different things in the story. You know, it doesn't bother me. Like, I think right away the big deal was about him with this case back in like 2018, where with his wife, where she called him an alcoholic and said he was threatening suicide and stuff like that. Like you said, I mean, I know all kinds of people that have been through all kinds of shit, and they all range in different variations of intelligence and knowledge and wisdom. You know what I mean? So,
right.
I don't think that fighting with your wife and getting drunk and saying, "I'm waiting for you to kill me," is I'm going to lie about UFOs. So, but I don't know. I think I'm still not convinced that we've been visited.
Okay.
By an intelligent life force that from another planet. No, but I was like, you know, the dimensional thing is more believable to me than interstellar travel. I don't know if that sounds crazy, but
can I ask you something? What do you think about Blink-182 saying biological robots?
Well, that's what I was saying with the Altered Carbon movie. I said it kind of reminds me of that, and I was like, which makes sense that if you're going to have interstellar travel, that there's got to be, you know, there's always, you see it in the movies, they do like cryogenics.
Mm-hmm.
But it makes more sense that if you had the technology to build an interstellar vehicle, that you would have the technology to alter, you know, life. You'd have AI. Whether it would be consciousness could be downloadable or whatnot, you know what I mean? I don't know, but that kind of idea makes more sense to me in interstellar travel than it does.
And that's the alien interview. That's what the alien says. Yeah,
it's like if you can't have like there's all kinds of theory. And here's the thing too. It's like there's unexplained phenomenon that happens all over on this planet, not because aliens, but because we really don't know shit. You know, most of what we say we know is still just unproven theory. You know what I mean? Like
absolutely
what the center of the earth is, and I mean
absolutely, dude.
So
absolutely. What's at the bottom of the oceans?
That's just it. They're finding new life down there all the time. They send down probes and stuff, like unmanned vessels down there with cameras on them, and they're like, "What the fuck is that?" You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I dig that stuff, so I go watch video. Like, you know, I see stuff come up that when they discover something new and they haven't identified it before, they're like, "We're not really sure what this is," you know, and that's one of those things where it's like, to put it in perspective about how little we could possibly be, like, to go with what you were saying, to an extent, is I did this a long time ago, because this was for when, you know, when you get in these talks about the world being overpopulated with people, and this is math. This is simple math, and I'm terrible at math, and I did this, so anybody else can, I'm sure of it. If you go and look at say the state of Rhode Island, right, and you take Rhode Island and you divide it, because you can go and find out all the information about Rhode Island. You can find out how many square miles it is, and you can divide that down into square feet, right? And then you can take those square feet and you can divide it by the population of the planet. And what that number gives you is an allotment of space for everybody to stand.
Shit.
And everybody would fit in Rhode Island.
So if you just figure...
The entire population of this planet would stand in Rhode Island, and everybody would have somewhere around like a 4 to 6 foot square area to stand in.
And everybody would have a house in the United States with a yard.
If you were in Texas, everybody would have like 2 acres.
Oh, it's that like that.
If you were in Alaska, everybody would have like 15 to 20 acres or something like that. It jumps.
Yeah, I know it's crazy. I know it. I do know that. I do know it's crazy. My dad told me one time that he read in Time magazine that we had enough land in the medians of our interstate to feed the entire United States.
Sure.
And that makes sense because miles and miles and miles and miles of median, that's just grass, you know?
So there's, I mean, because I even remember what it came up from was I was trying to give a buddy of mine, we were arguing about, he's like, we've seen this entire planet. And I was like, and immediately went to the ocean. He goes, I mean, on the land. And I was like, I don't believe we've been everywhere. And he was like, yeah, we've stepped foot on every piece of this planet.
No, not even
and
close.
I said, I don't think it's even close. And he was like,
not even close.
no way, man. We've seen it all. I was like, I guarantee you there's spots on this planet, giant pockets on this planet that no person's ever been to before because it's impassable and it's
we've
zero
talked about,
reason to go just randomly go to these places. Like
we've talked about Afghanistan. We've talked about like the Canadian Rockies in Washington and Canada. We talked
about the taiga forest in Russia, northern Russia, and Siberia.
Right. Yeah.
That forest contains an estimated 1/3 of all the trees on the planet.
The Tunguska, I don't know how to say that right. Tunguska incident. So they didn't know that happened.
Yeah.
For like 20 years, and somebody hiked up there, and they're like, "Holy shit!"
Right.
There's a giant.
Everything's laying down.
It's a giant like explosion area. What the fuck happened?
Yeah. So nobody heard it. Nobody saw it. Nobody even witnessed it after it happened. It was like somebody came apart and all this forest, all the trees were knocked down.
So yeah, I get you.
So there's just like,
and he just breached like a little tiny part.
So it's definitely possible that like shit could be going on this planet and we're not aware of it. I mean, we got this like pervasive belief that we surveil everything and that we're everywhere, and we're not everywhere. We can't be, because like I said, if you took every single person on this planet, you could fit them into the tiniest state in the United States. It wouldn't be a livable situation. I'm just saying if it would be like a rock concert.
But it would in Texas.
But in Texas, you'd have land. You'd actually have land. So I've
never heard that.
Now it would have to grid off perfectly.
No, I get it. But like, I've never.
But it's just math. Well, that's because you haven't heard it, because I just mathed it out. I didn't. You know what I mean? I didn't like. It wasn't like it wasn't like on a website or something. It was just like I need to. I was like, because I was trying to figure out how many square feet everybody could fit and what that area would be, and that size, that area was this big. And then I started thinking, what's that big, and I started looking around. I was like, what's the state sizes? How do I figure out? Let's go to Rhode Island.
Yeah, I mean, you factor in the Amazon rainforest and the Sahara Desert.
Oh yeah,
Antarctica.
There's stuff that you see those people trekking through those forests, and it's like, even though you say, they walked all the way into this part, and the whole time they were moving, they never saw 20, 30 feet to the left or right of them.
Right.
That still wasn't explored, because it's so thick jungle you can't see through it. They're hacking through with machetes. So you're talking about narrow ant lines and not the whole thing being observed. 20 foot to their left could have been a giant crystal cavern.
I mean, I can attest to, I drove across the country a few times, and there are places where I have driven for 3 hours and not seen a person, not seen a gas station, not seen a house, not seen a car.
Right.
And I swear to God, you start thinking you're in the Twilight Zone.
Yeah, and
because you start looking at your gas tank and you're like, oh my God.
Yeah, you start getting a little freaked out.
It's 3/4, it's half.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden they're like, gas 50 miles. There's a sign that says gas 50 miles. And you're like, oh, thank God there's something coming up. But there are parts of our country that like you could drive on a road, not in a forest. not
Yeah.
and not see people for 3 hours. That's crazy.
Right.
Going, 75 miles an hour.
And even if you can see really far too, like that's another thing. People think because it's observed, it's been explored. It's not explored because you observed it. I can look back in my woods right now, and I know my woods behind my house like the back of my hand. I grew up out here. You know what I mean? I can look out there right now and see what it looks like from my house, and know how much cool, crazy shit's back there behind the trees that I can't see from here. So just looking at something doesn't mean it was explored. There could be all kinds of hidden things in there. So
yeah, like out here.
So I will give into the fact that to sum up what I'm saying is I give into the fact that there could be, like you were saying, there could be aliens that visited us. They could be living somewhere where we're not at. That's very possible. I just don't think it's probable. And I don't think, and I think what I was saying about Bob Lazar was, he believes what he saw. He believes what he was doing. But what he was doing wasn't actually what he thought he was doing. You know what I mean? And this might be the similar case where if he was handling, it's like, and this might have been like we talked about with Bob Lazar, where they put out disinformation to find whistleblowers. You know what I mean? Yeah. And he took the bait like a mouse in a trap.
And he says that. He says that all the time now. He said, I believe they told me that just to put a tracker on me.
Yeah, sure. So, and maybe he started to know too much. You know what I mean? Maybe he actually did know too much, not about the aliens thing, but about something else.
More like the technology.
The stuff he keeps saying I can't talk about. If he's talking about that stuff, then it's like, well, he's starting to get a little too much information. I think that's what happens with terrorists. When they, you know what I mean? When they're like, they send the guy out with the bomb vest, it's like he learned too much. You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? This guy knows a little too much, and if they squeeze him in Guantanamo, he take him to Gitmo, he might sing. So like, hey, Ahmed, we gotta put the bomb vest on you, and
the military is always a need to know. You're on a need to know basis, so that makes sense.
So I think it might have been more like the same scenario I said with Bob Lazar, that he believes what he was doing or seeing or saying, but it wasn't actually what was going on. And I think they're okay with. They were like, maybe they released the aliens footage stuff because they knew this fucker was coming out. Kind of mixed the whole lot in. They knew they were going to oust this guy, so they like released all this UFO footage stuff, and then they go, hey man, secret program, aliens, and he goes, I'm a whistleblower, and they were like, got him. Now you're out. Or we knew you were going to be a fucking a whistleblower. So I'm sure they're always, you're always constantly getting vetted all the time.
Oh yeah,
in intelligence.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So if they started getting the idea that maybe you could start talking, they probably have ways to oust you, and it's probably like you said, it's a mouse in a trap. It's like, here, give him aliens, nobody's gonna fucking believe him. And he'll look like a crazy person.
Well, now you kind of turned me more than for that. Now that you say it like that, I mean, I did believe Bob Lazar. I really did, but
I don't think Bob Lazar was lying. I think that Bob Lazar was working with and around technologies that he was told were alien, and I don't think they were alien at all. And I think they kept those compartmentalized, and they kept the employees shuffled so that you work on a little here, you work a little here, you work a little there, and before you know it, you got the technology built, and nobody knows how to do it from start to finish.
Yeah, you did make a really good point. Like, that you can't. Nobody can know all about that technology because then everybody wants it.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, so doubtful.
Yeah, very doubtful for me.
Okay. You know what? I'm okay with that because this guy, he had every opportunity on every single platform to say some kind of fact.
Right.
And he just danced around it. And, you know, I've seen enough magicians to know that.
Yeah, and there was a guy. There were several people because they interviewed a ton of people about this guy. You know what I mean? And they went to all the different SETI. They interviewed people from SETI and all the different aspects of physics and science and all that shit.
Yeah,
and
I know. Once you talk it out, you're like, well, I mean,
every one of them were like, there's nothing credible to what he's saying because he's given no information and it's mostly hearsay.
And the other thing is, like, who made the reports?
Mm-hmm.
And are they decoys?
Yeah.
Right.
I believe they do that shit all the time. I believe
that too. It's to see who you can trust.
Right, and they've admitted as much in different branches and different parts of intelligence. They've admitted much, you know, and it's a common game in the corporate world too.
Absolutely.
You know, they tag email. Like
definitely.
I saw a show where they even did that. It was there's like a name for it in the corporate world where they send out an email and every one of them has a punctuation error somewhere in it. And each punctuation error is specific to the person that received the email.
Oh, that's fucking heavy.
So when the email got shared, they knew
you
exactly
would know
who
did it.
Yeah.
Huh.
They like forwarded it to somebody else secretly through another server that they tried to reroute, and none of it mattered because the punctuation error was specific to the user.
I'm a corporation of one, so if I ever make
right,
it would be Meyer. But good to know, and good to pass on to our people because say there's a trade secret or something they don't want to get out, and they send you some false information. You're like,
sure,
hey, get a load of this, Bill, and you fucking send it to them.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, yeah, you're fucking fired.
Yeah. And they were like, what? It could have been any one of them. So like, well, we told him it was Bigfoot.
It was you, semicolon.
You know what I mean? We said unicorn, Bigfoot, aliens. You know what I mean? Nostradamus.
I've never heard of that. That's interesting. All right, so we're doubtful.
Yeah, doubtful.
All right. Well, I'm Anthony.
I'm Brandon.
I'm Mario.
And this is Everything That's Weird. Thank you for listening to the podcast. If you'd like to contribute, please go to our Patreon page at Everything That's Weird. Check us out on Instagram at Everything That's Weird or Twitter at ETWPod. Or if you'd like to send us an old-fashioned email, go to everythingthat'sweird@gmail.com. For show notes and merchandise, go to www.everythingthat'sweird.com. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter. And be sure to like, subscribe, and review anywhere that you listen to podcasts. Thank you for listening. See you next time.